Hey guys, my name is Liam and you're watching Jeep Sheep TV. Today we're going to be talking about rust, particularly rust on the frame of this 1994 Jeep Wrangler YJ. There's a lot of common rust areas and I'm going to try my best to cover those. Because of that, it's going to be a multi-part series and some of the areas just deserve their own video. That's really the only reason why. In this video particularly, we're going to be covering two main areas. The first one is going to be right here at the bump stop. So there's a bump stop right above your front axle, and underneath of that, a lot of moisture gets caught in and it tends to rust out. So I'll show you how I repair that one. The second place is going to be right down here at the skid plate. Where the skid plate bolts into the frame, there's these little riv nuts and those get rusted out as well. And I'll show you how I solve that problem as well. Now, all of this work was actually done in my old garage, not this one here. So we get to go back in time and check that out. Let's get to work.
All right.
Hey guys, I assume this is kind of a common problem, so maybe we can kind of work through this together. I don't really know. But it's likely that you, like me, if you remove your bump stops, you will find this little hole here, which is not a factory hole. In fact, it's a rust hole. And if that's the case and you romp around a bunch, it might propagate up into a crack in your frame. It's doing this on both sides. So we're going to go through today and cut out all of this and then make a sheet or a plate that's going to fit in there, sort of weld it in, and then maybe do a little bit of reinforcement. And hopefully that will prevent this from spreading all the way up and cracking and being a real problem for the Jeep. Looks like there's some pretty good news here. So if we get in and look at our metal, it's actually really quite nice and thick. It was all just localized to that one little rust spot. So we should have good metal to weld to. And patching this should be pretty easy. That hole was for a plastic little push pin that we don't really use anymore. So I'll just fill that up. And we'll try to paint the inside of the frame as much as we can from here, because we got a hole in the frame, so you might as well. Yeah, this is looking really good. That's not worrisome at all. This frame should last me quite a while. Might want to blow some of the dirt out of it though. Here's your rusty pieces. So you can see it's pretty thin, but it thickens up real nice and quick. So that's good. I didn't want to have to cut out too much of the frame. Just this little bit here. And we'll get that all filled in real nice. And be back on the road. Okay, just a little bit of cardboard. Get that to fit just like our patch is going to be. And I wrote low on there because I cut it a little short. So we'll make sure to have a little extra material. But it looks like it should go in pretty good. I just need to find some metal that's about that thick. Oh my gosh. Whoa. Before we drop some paint in here, did a quick sandblast. I mean, I didn't get all the way up there, but for what, $12 sandblaster in like 3 minutes? That's pretty cool. Not bad. So at least this is ready to weld on that crack there, and then we can throw some paint on it, and we'll get the other plate all ready. Pretty nifty. shaping and grinding and whatnot, we got something that's gonna fit in there pretty good. So, time to just tack it in and start going nuts. Well, shoot. You can see right here, right there, I ran out of wire. And on this right here, it looks like I'm doing the thing I always do, which I'm holding the tip too far back and I'm going a little bit too fast. Because this is pretty, sitting on there pretty good. I don't know how penetrated this is. This one right here looks a lot better. It's a lot more flat. But, yep, ran out of wire. We're going to have to continue with the rest of this after we get some more wire. Yay! I'm learning here, but you can see the plate is in here, and with enough grinding it looks like it belongs. We did have an issue on this side where it blew through, and I don't really know if maybe I didn't get all of the rusty metal out of there, if that's why it blew through, if it was thin, or if I just did something wrong. But either way, we got that full weld, so we can go and grind that smooth, and I might leave these welds just out here as a reminder of my welding ability at this time. So as I come back to this place, I can always look at it and know roughly what I was able to do. Pretty cool. So there's some of the welds up here. The crack is gone. And if we look under here, it's a little lumpy, but it's about right. As if nothing ever happened, sorta. So let's get this guy painted up, see what we can do. And we got some paint on there. Just like that. Looks pretty decent. So, better than it was. Solid metal again. When I tried to remove my skid plate, many of the bolts just spun and didn't come out of the frame. Fortunately, the skid plate is also incredibly rusty and just kind of fell out around the bolts. I'll show my plan for repairing that later in this video, but for right now we're going to repair the spinning weld nuts in the frame. The idea here is pretty simple. We got a patch panel, same size and shape as what came out. And instead of using a riv nut, which would have been cool, but I don't have any this size, we used an old bolt and we welded it in real good. Then we welded in this guy and this guy, which are going to keep that from spinning because these are going to contact the wall and they're gonna really keep it nice and in place. Additionally, these little guys here are gonna help me to align this in the frame because it will sit like so. It'll sit on those tabs and it'll hold it in place before I weld it, which will be pretty convenient. I'll demonstrate that for you. Hard to do with the welding glove on, but whoa, Nelly. Ta-da! So now that'll be nice and in place when it's time for me to go in and actually start welding this thing. And it's not going to jostle all about. Additionally, we can throw in some magnets in here to keep it in place and steady so it doesn't move around as we're doing the weld. For these other guys here, the ones that worked, we're going to clean it up really good. Maybe even tack in a little bit of weld to keep this thing from spinning in the future. It does appear that they had tried to weld these from the factory, but just years of corrosion has not been nice to them. And the same down here. I wonder what happened there. So we've talked about the skid plate from the side of the frame and replacing the nuts in the frame, or the riv nuts or captured nuts or whatever they happen to be. We talked about replacing those. But what if your skid plate doesn't accept the bolts anymore? And so I'll show you what that means. So the skid plate has these cool bulges, and the bolts go and they fit in there really nice. See, they're tapered. That's pretty cool. Fits in there and it centers, and it's overall probably quite strong. But if you're like me and this has rusted out, it just falls right through. You can see it's really not great at all. There's a lot of space in there, and unfortunately a lot of mine are that way. This one, not so bad. It might actually hold, but just barely. So on eBay, you can get replacement bolts for the skid plate, and you can get them like this with the taper, or get them like this, like any other bolt. And they come with these guys to adapt it so it has a nice flat surface for it to torque to. And how this works is this guy goes in here and does that little taper for you. Well, if you buy this kit and you're like me, you can, and I'll do this from the bottom, you can go and actually weld these in place in these holes. So you'd line it up, put a magnet on top of there, hold it in place, and give it some weld. Same here. Now, I was kind of hoping that it'd be a scenario where it's kind of like this guy and just a little bit rusted, and so it would actually align and sit in place for me to weld. But in this case, there is a lot of wiggle room. But either way, center it on there real good, line it up flush with the magnet, and then you should be able to get some nice weld around there, especially because of that taper. You'll be able to get some big fat weld around there. And then this same kit comes with washers, and the washers, thank goodness, are big enough to cover that hole, so you won't be relying just on the strength of your weld. It will be going to the original metal as well. And then your skid plate should be good as new, or even a little bit better, and it should bolt right on. But I do recommend tacking in place first, zap zap, and fitting it on there, making sure it's going to fit and line up, and then doing your massive welds. Let's go. Okay, let's look at this really quick. So this right here is exactly what I was intending to do. Put the little washer thingies, the slanted washer thingies, in the hole and tack it in. This is not what I expected. So these little slanted washer things are actually stainless steel, so they didn't stick to the magnet at all. And I had to hold it up with my hand while I welded it. And then of course, the metal being thin in these areas from the rust, it just blew out. And I had a lot of issues with the wire falling through the gap and not arcing, so because quite a big gap to fill. So that sucked a lot. And then over here, we got off center. So we're going to test fit this onto the Jeep, and we'll see if we can get all of the bolts in, and if we can, then the alignment is fine, and we'll add a bunch more weld from the other side where we can really fill that in
and then we don't have to worry about having to grind all these super flat afterwards. So let's go. Okay, a lot of work's been done here, some of it off camera, so I apologize, just easier. So I went in and test fit this on the Jeep like 3 or 4 times, and each time what I learned is that I need to make these holes just slightly larger, and I did so. I started to do so with a drill, but it just dulled all my drill bits, so I don't know if this is like a hardened stainless steel or whatever it is, but it does not want to let stuff cut it. So I'm using a Dremel with a carbide just to kind of wallow out the holes a little bit. The welds, some are okay, some are really not. This metal, I tried to clean it as good as I could, but getting into this pocket was difficult. So there was a lot of issues, contamination in the weld, but we got it. And then lastly, this hole here, I decided to leave completely open because it would not assemble otherwise. And some of that is because this skid plate has never known that frame. This is a new frame that I've put on and an old skid plate, and it's actually a frame that I've sectioned on. So there's a chance that it's a little bit out of whack from what it used to be for factory. But now we're just gonna get ready for paint, and then this guy goes on. In the next video, we will be talking about the common rust area at the back of the frame, right where the leaf spring shackle mounts. You won't want to miss this one because what started as a simple repair ended up being a replacement of 75% of the frame with a rust-free new one. And in the video after that, we will be looking at the gas tank skid plate and actually making a new one from a piece of plate steel. So make sure you're subscribed and make sure you're getting notified when I post videos, because these should be a lot of fun.